Hi, this is Kristen Baxter, Associate Professor of Art at Moravian College, and I'd like to share this video with you about my experiences teaching FYS for the past 10 years. So the purpose of this talk is to share with you how relationships have shaped my teaching. So this presentation won't really touch on the mechanics of teaching writing, but rather I wanted to share with you how relationships with students, faculty, and the broader community have shaped my teaching approaches. And I'll share with you some of my successes, challenges, and ideas that I've used from the first year of writing workshops. The first success that I've had is, in addition to writing, I've planned my classes so that students express their ideas in other ways, such as making art, sketching, collecting, participating in field trips, teaching others, and so on. And one of the first classes in which I did this was a section called Where Do Ideas Come From?, where I was really looking at where do artists, writers, scientists, how do they come up with the ideas for new projects, for new works of art, for new initiatives. So one of the books that I assigned for this section was called How to Be an Explorer of the World by Carrie Smith. And here you see a thumbnail from a YouTube video that I created for this FYS section. At the time, the FYS professors created these short videos to kind of promote their sections to prospective students. So How to Be an Explorer of the World encouraged readers to use the book itself as this interactive kind of scrapbook, sketchbook. So here you see some of my students after we had gone out, collected various found objects and materials from outside, and then rearranging them, reconfiguring them. And then students would take those ideas, take those arrangements, write notes about those experiences, even sketch the things they were actually building. Some students would glue or tape different things that they had found into the book itself. The book also encourages students to actually take it with them throughout the day to kind of record sounds that they hear, conversations. So it was really to try to get students to think about ideas for writing as not just coming when you sit in front of your laptop, but rather having this resource of experiences to pull from. We also used this Sketch a Day book called a visual journal. It was basically a blank sketchbook that students could write in the dates. So each page offered space for the students to create two different sketches. So they would use this each day. And I kept that pretty open. They could do a very simple sketch. They could do things more elaborate. They could even just include notes as well. So in addition to having those kind of active experiences in class, one of the challenges that I faced is really trying to balance content and then research and writing skills. So while I'm teaching students about the creative process and helping them to engage in their own creative process and reading what other scholars have written about this, what studies have been done, really trying to teach content and then translating that into writing. That's the biggest challenge that I've found, is really trying to balance those two things. This also came up when I was teaching variations on an FYS section called Exploring the Great Museums and Broadway Theater in New York City. So here is one of my sections of FYS in front of the Metropolitan Museum of Art. And so for this section, it was tricky because I was trying to prepare students for these visits to art museums by teaching content. So art history, contemporary art, museum studies, there's a lot of content to share with the students. And also art criticism as well. Here you see the students in front of the Brooklyn Museum on another trip. And some of these experiences weren't all that fun or interesting for some of the students. So it was an added kind of unexpected challenge that I had to teach students to write about things that they don't like. So how do you criticize experiences or artwork or things you've read in a productive, constructive way? So that's another layer of content that I was teaching. Here, one of the places that we visited is called the Brooklyn Art Library. This was in Williamsburg. And this is a library with 41,000 sketchbooks from over 130 countries. So anybody can participate. If you just go online right now and Google Brooklyn Art Library, you can find out about how to get one of their sketchbooks, their blank sketchbooks, and you can fill it. So this library is filled with sketchbooks completed by the general public who have donated their sketchbooks to this library. And one of my FYS sections, we all visited together. And here you can see even Nicole Tabor and Martha Reed joined us on this visit. And students can view the sketchbooks there, so you can't take them out, but they are available to view digitally also online. But this was a tricky experience. This is a little bit of a challenge for me too, because as a writer, as a teacher, and as an artist, I've become, and just as an adult living on the planet, I've become very accustomed to not always knowing how I'll use certain ideas or experiences in my own work. So it was a challenge to teach students how to reflect on their experiences, even though, or even when, they weren't immediately sure how exactly those experiences fit into their research. So while the students found this visit to the Brooklyn Art Library really interesting, they were less convinced of why is this important, even though we were creating our own sketchbooks and visual journals using the How to Be an Explorer of the World book. So sometimes just connecting all of those dots has been a challenge for me. And kind of building on that too, this is a picture taken at Grounds for Sculpture in New Jersey. So it's been a challenge, and maybe it's just another component of teaching content. But how do I teach or convince students of the value of field notebooks and their role in formal research and writing? So all of my students would take their field notebooks with them on these trips. But again, how can I incorporate what I've learned and use that in research? So another challenge, again, with this combination of content versus writing and research skills, with these museum trips, here we are in front of the Guggenheim Museum. There's a fair amount of logistics to keep in mind. So not many of these students had been to New York City before. So just preparing them for the logistics of getting from our charter bus at the Hill or at the Hub into Midtown Manhattan and then subway rides, that was a bit of a challenge. And a good challenge to have is collaborating with faculty. So here you can see I am with Joe Shosh and his FYS section. We collaborated on a couple of our FYS sections were a combination of the museum and Broadway shows. So our students got to participate in those experiences together. So to wrap up then, just to share an idea that I've taken from my FYS workshops, things that I've done that have worked really well, and I think I'm going to keep doing it more, is realizing that student writing and just overall engagement in the course is stronger when you build assignments around meaningful real-world community connections. So this past fall was the first time I collaborated with Shanti Project in Allentown. So Shanti Project is an organization that places yoga teachers in schools and prisons, community centers, any place to help people who have experienced trauma through and helping them through yoga and mindfulness practices. So this was a great collaboration with my yoga, art, and writing first year writing seminar last fall. So to collaborate with Shanti Project, I had my students go online to the Foundation Directory online, which is basically a database of grants that are available to nonprofits. And after doing lots of research on how yoga and mindfulness is used in schools and in community centers and in prisons, my students used that research and then wrote grant proposals. So we went on the Foundation Directory online and found RFPs like this one from the Century Fund Trust in Allentown. So this organization gives primarily to arts and cultural programs, education, conservation, human services, and community development in the Lehigh Valley. So this was a perfect fit for what Shanti Project offers. So my students found these RFPs through the foundation database. And you can see here, this lists the types of information that the RFPs requested. So we pretended as a class that we were going to be fundraisers for Shanti Project. How can we raise money for programs that they're doing? So although we never officially submitted these RFPs to the foundations or the corporations who were giving out money, it was a great exercise in how a nonprofit could do this. So after they wrote up the grant proposals, they then had to remix it again into a presentation, a formal presentation. And we invited the executive director of Shanti Project, and we invited members of the FYWS community, and we invited board members from Shanti Project to come to our FYS class down on South Campus, and my students presented the research that they had done and the grant proposal that they had written, and they remixed it into another presentation. So overall then, I hope I've been able to share with you how relationships have really impacted my teaching. So just to sum up, the biggest success that I've had is really having students engage in multimodal ways of learning. So not just writing or text-based writing, but also engaging in art making, in recording observations, field trips, teaching others. All of those kind of really active ways of learning has been a huge success. And like I mentioned, the biggest challenge has been balancing all of the responsibilities of teaching content along with writing and research skills. And then finally, the best ideas from the FYS workshops that I've really taken hold of are these community connections and really building community relationships so that students are more engaged in course content and in their own writing. And then finally, having this variety of genres, different writing styles, different writing purposes have been huge benefits to my classes. So I hope you've enjoyed this short film, and thank you so much for listening. And I'd be happy to talk to you further if you needed any other ideas. Thank you.